So, gentlemen, are you ready to go?
Good to go.
Okay, everyone, please enjoy.
All right, hi everybody. My name is Adam and I will be moderating today's talk session. As you can see on the slide, how can Osaka and Kansai become a global innovation hub? But first, I wanted to say a huge thank you to the audience for making the effort to be here, and to our amazing panelists for coming and agreeing to share your experience and your opinions with us. And also to all the event organizers who have pulled this massive event together, which is no small feat. I'm personally very excited to see people face to face after 3 years on Zoom. Now to today's topic. So with the upcoming Expo in 2025, there's never been a better time for Osaka and Kansai to position itself as a global innovation hub. And some significant progress has been made, but challenges remain. And so we are very privileged to welcome this diverse panel to share their opinions with us. And in today's topic, we're hoping to learn from some of the most advanced global innovation ecosystems and the people operating between them to hopefully give some insight into where we here should be focusing our efforts to hopefully help Osaka and Kansai truly become a global innovation hub. So we are joined today by Dr. Felix Messner, the Consul, CEO, and Head of Post at the Embassy of Switzerland in Osaka.
Consulate.
And the Swissnex in Japan. It was a long one. Fabian Tan, Commercial Counsellor at the Embassy of Singapore and Regional Group Director at Enterprise Singapore. And Hiroshi Oshima, Japan Country Manager at Optibus, an Israeli unicorn company. So once again, thank you so much for being here. Shall we start by introducing yourselves and your organizations briefly?
Yeah, so thank you very much, Adam, and also here really big thanks to the organizers of, I think, a very successful series, Hack Osaka. So my name is Felix Messner, so I'm the consul, it's kind of a science consul of the Consulate of Switzerland here in Osaka. And it's also at the same time the Swissnex in Japan. So maybe you could already hear from us. We are the new kid on the block. So basically we are just starting our operations here in Osaka and the Kansai, beautiful Kansai region. And actually it's an investment by the Swiss government to get started here in Kansai with a very new type of consulate. So I personally think it fits very well to the Kansai region. So it's a science consulate. So we're the first science consulate in Japan with the name Swissnex. And yeah, so a little background. Previously I have been in Tokyo at the embassy, was then in Boston for 5 years and in China for 4 years. And during the Olympics came back to Japan. It's great to be back.
Thank you. Cheers, Felix. Fabian.
Sure. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Fabian Tan. Hajimemashite, Fabian Tan to moshimasu. Well, Dr. Messner said that they are the new kid on the block. Actually, for us, we are even the newer kid on the block because we don't even have a presence here in Kansai yet. We travel quite a bit from Tokyo. I'm based in Tokyo at our embassy, and I'm also the regional director representing Enterprise Singapore. What does Enterprise Singapore do? Actually, our main role is essentially a bridge that connects Singapore startups with Kansai, with Japan, and Japanese startups, especially the deep tech startups which are interested in our Singapore ecosystem, the Japanese corporates that are interested in open innovation, to work with them and partner them to grow in Singapore. A little bit about myself is I have a special relationship with Kansai. I used to study at Kyoto University and hang out in Umeda, in Namba, Shinsaibashi, and also in Kobe as well. So Keihanshin is a region that is very dear to my heart. I think I've lost track of how many times I've been to Kansai since I started my posting in Japan. I started my posting in Japan in the midst of COVID. That was 2021. I always tell the story. When I came from Singapore to Haneda Airport, there were only 8 people on my plane, 8 passengers. And things have changed a lot, 1 year and 9 months, 1 year and 10 months into my posting, Japan is now reopening, and I do think that this is really a great and opportune moment to seize the chances, the opportunities that global travel is bringing to Kansai region, and to catalyze the co-innovation linkages between Kansai business community with the regional hubs and the startup nodes around the world. Very glad to be here, and thank you to the organizers of Hack Osaka and also to our panelists.
Thank you, Fabian.
Okay, I'm Hiroshi Oshima. Let me introduce myself and also my company. I'm Japanese, so please allow me to speak in English today. Yeah, so I have experience for IT industry for a long time, or more than 25 years old. And I have experience a big company like SAP and Oracle before, and also I have experience for startup company like Optipulse. And so Optipulse is the Israeli company, based company, and it's now growing very rapidly. So it's for software company for AI, optimizing for transportation, for public transportation. We are now focused on the bus industry at this moment. And also we already have 400 employees globally speaking. And we have lots of customers in Europe and also North America and other customers in Asia. So I'm very happy to join this for today's meeting. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Fantastic. And just to remind you, my name is Adam, and I am a director of Global DX, and we are an Osaka-based consultancy supporting Japanese corporations with their open innovation, particularly with foreign companies. Okay, enough introductions. Let's kick off the conversation. My first question, I'm really interested to hear from both Felix and Fabian, the embassy officials here. In Japan, there are still many corporations who are still engaged in internal-only closed innovation. And then there are more progressive ones who are engaged in open innovation, but only with domestic Japanese companies. So I'm really intrigued to know why Japanese corporations choose, what are some of the key reasons that they choose to collaborate globally with your respective ecosystems?
Yes, maybe to answer the question, I think there's no way around being more global, especially when you see how other countries, big corporates in other countries tackle the innovation side. So I think you have to be connected around the world to see what are the newest trends on one hand. So I can give you an example in Switzerland, same as in Singapore, we are a very small country. And this also has the advantage actually that there's no other way. You have to collaborate with your neighbor countries, of course. And so that's obviously one of the reasons why, for example, we speak all our neighbor countries' languages as well in Switzerland. And this helps us actually to connect more easily to globally as well. So once you're a small country, you immediately have to connect globally. So you're born global, so to say. And so this is with the large corporates, for example, back in Switzerland, the same as with the startups, so they immediately go out. But to answer your question, I think one way is to be successful for open global innovation is try to find similarities, try to find ways how to enrich your pipeline of innovation with ideas from outside. And I think that's a key. I think also open innovation can be on the ground here when you go to a university as a big corporate and you seek very innovative universities and seek collaboration with universities already on the ground here in Kansai. But this obviously can also be done globally on a global scale. And so one of the things what we do here is we bring a good influx of ideas from abroad already to Kansai. So we bring many startups to the region who are very interested to start. And I think that's a very easy interface to tap into and to profit at the end. And we're more than happy to help about this interfacing.
Thank you very much. Yeah, what about Singapore, Fabian? What are some reasons that Japanese choose to do business over there?
Sure. Maybe what I can do is to first frame this conversation between Singapore and Japan. I think Singapore and Japan, we have been close partners in the economic sphere for a long time. And I would kind of group it in 3 phases. You have SJ 1.0, Singapore-Japan 1.0. That was in the early stage of our independence, our founding nation years, 1960s, 1970s. And at that time, Singapore was a low-cost country. And Japan was going through the high-growth economic period, Kodo Seijoki. So at that time, a lot of the Japanese corporates were very interested to set up manufacturing locations in Singapore to tap on the cheap labor. So that was 1.0. Then you move to 2.0. That was probably at the turn of the century, 1990s, year 2000, year 2010. So that was the period where there was a lot of integration in Southeast Asia, ASEAN as an economic bloc. We're not as big as the EU in terms of economic size, but I think with the 10 countries coming together, there's a significant market that we're talking about, close to 700 million in population. And the Japanese corporates, many from Kansai, from Osaka, from Kyoto, they saw Singapore as this location where they can orchestrate their regional operations, regional headquarters, Chiki Honbu. And actually, COVID came, COVID struck, and people realized I can be in Osaka, I can be in Umeda, but I can actually talk to my guy in Jakarta. I can talk to my guy in Kuala Lumpur. So is there really a need for regional headquarters? So that's where we come to SJ 3.0, Singapore-Japan 3.0. I do see the evolution of the discussions that we're having with Japanese corporates right now. I think along the lines of what Dr. Mosner talked about as well, a lot about looking out, open innovation, and they're saying that, hey, Singapore is not just a location for me to manage my regional subsidiaries, but it's a place where I can create new business, where I can invest in startups, where I can actually tap on the open innovation ecosystem. And here is where we think that 1 + 1 can be more than 2. It is a synergistic effect where if we have like Singapore startup ecosystem coming together with Kansai startup ecosystem, can we actually have some of the Kansai problem statements brought to Singapore and crowdsourcing for solutions? Can we bring some of the Singapore-based startup solutions? It could be in mobility, it could be in agri-tech, food tech, it could be also in AI and big data coming to Kansai. And I can share a few concrete examples. We have like Crust. Crust was actually a participant in Hack Osaka 2 years ago, and they've done reasonably well in terms of bringing the food waste from the hotels in downtown Umeda, in Shinsaibashi, and bring the food waste and upcycle it into beer. And this beer is then sold in the hotels again. So there's a circularity, a positive, sustainable loop here that is being built. And then we have like SWAT Mobility. They are actually doing AI, demand bus routing, very similar to what your company does in Toyonaka. Yeah, so which is kind of one of the northern suburbs of Osaka. And maybe just one last point, which is what your question was really about. Why look outwards? I think the Japanese tend to use this word, san-gaku, right? San-gaku, and I will add another factor, kin. So san for academic, industry. Gaku for academic, academia. You have your Osaka University, for example, and then financing. What we realize is that Singapore as a location is becoming very active in the academia side, where we have a lot of patents coming out from our research institutes nationally and globally. We connect a lot in terms of joint research. And then similarly, we work a lot with the VCs, the private equity firms, and there's a lot of money chasing for startups in Singapore, and I think we're very open to Japanese startups as well. And then the last part is really the industries. We have currently about 7,000 multinationals based in Singapore, and a lot of them are really looking at the next frontier. They're looking at corporate venturing, looking at external innovation.
Thank you very much. You actually both touched on a point that I wanted to ask you about next. There are certain corporations that prefer to collaborate in market, in your own markets, and then you have the approach of bringing companies to Japan. Do you see a particular trend or one is more common than the other? Do you think Japanese corporations prefer to collaborate in their home territory, or do they prefer to collaborate out in your own markets?
I personally think it's starting a movement, as mentioned before, and also by my colleague, that it's linked to innovation. So of course, if you want to have a huge variety of innovation that suits maybe your pipeline, you have to see internationally as well. Of course, I mean, it's much easier to work locally, and from our experience, we also sense this. There's maybe a notion that is called not invented here. So this is what we as a supporter of many startups, for example, last year we supported over 50 startups to come from Switzerland to Japan. So basically it was for us a big success because there was so much interest to come to Japan. But on the other hand, you also need to have a receiving end in Japan. And so we approached many corporates. And depending on the needs of the corporates, some are extremely welcoming, but we also had one or the other experience that maybe it was not so welcomed because it's not invented here. So that's maybe one of the answers. And I'm not only talking about Switzerland. I think many other countries experience a similar challenge. And basically, it's not something that can be overcome because there's a lot of opportunity behind it. As mentioned by my colleague Fabian here, also in Switzerland we have rock-solid startups. They have deep tech insight and a survival rate of the first 5 years of over 80% in average. So it's a sure thing to invest and a sure thing also to welcome and see what makes them so successful. And I can give you one example. I mean, only last year Switzerland is a tiny country, but we raised 3 unicorns. And one university, ETH Zurich, for example, they alone in 1 year, they created 32 deep tech startups. That's more than MIT. And so there's a lot to discover out there. And I think our job is simply to bring it to match and to do our interfacing task.
Fascinating. 80% survival rate is testament to
one university has an over 90% survival rate.
Unbelievable. We don't hear those figures here yet. But this is something that we're excited about changing, right? Hiroshi, I apologize. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah.
You've been very patient over there. I'd love to hear now about Optibus. You're an Israeli company, the startup nation, very global interest, not just Japan, but everyone's interested in Israeli technology, right? Cutting edge.
Right.
Why do companies choose to work with you in global markets already, as opposed to, say, local competitors?
I think that the potential of the product is basically the global competitions. So the Optibus can be used for any countries, the basic one. And also we have a lot of the opportunity to working with some of the Japanese company, with like the Shosha, something like that. So, and also another investment company in Japanese company. So for example, the Shosha, they have our office in Israel. They're contacting us very aggressively and wants to have a more joint collaboration. And other invest company in Japanese, so they want to work with us. So, and also the image of the Israeli company is something like a very good technology company, right? So that's a very basic concept, I think, for Japanese people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you. So who are you already working with globally, if you don't mind? Who are some of the biggest customers?
The Japanese.
No, not Japanese, any global. Who are some of your biggest customers right now?
Are the bus operators, you mean like our customers?
Yes, Optibuses.
Optibus is so our customer is based on the bus operators, but we have also working with some of the partners like a Volvo, etc., more like a global company. So that's an example.
Right.
And also Japanese Hitachi, etc. So yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I'm very keen. What does your corporate engagement usually look like with Optibus? We've seen a lot of corporations wanting to start with a free POC which is not always a necessary step, and particularly for early stage companies can be quite dangerous if you have limited runway. How does your corporate engagement usually look?
Yeah, so it's by step. So in startups, so we need to contact the customers, prospect, and also first introduction meeting. And after that, we propose the POC, etc. So they're reducing the risk. So especially in Japan, so the customers don't like to take a risk. So reliability is the first priority for Japan. So we usually propose the POC, not so commercial, before commercial discussion. So that's a very standard process, yes.
Perfect, sounds like a good fit here.
Right.
Wonderful, well thank you very much for sharing and introducing yourselves and your organizations as well. Now I want to talk more specifically about the Kansai region. And how's your experience been here? What are your impressions? Do you feel that there is a growing appetite for global open innovation here? This is something that I've been asking around about a lot, and I'm feeling that there is an overall trend towards an interest in collaboration with foreign companies, but still a hesitation, right? So I'd love to learn about your experience, and as you mentioned, 2 success case studies in Osaka as well, which is fantastic to hear. Yeah, could you share any about your experience and your feelings about the potential?
Yes, so similarly, one success case is very close here to Hack Osaka. So it was a win of last year. So it's the startup is called Mobifly. And I mean, just to give also the good news, startup needs to have a prototype that works. And Mobifly produces a boat, a ship that floats over the water. So it's a carbon neutral free way to travel over the water. So it's propelled by hydrogen, electricity, battery type, so whatever you need to make it in your design. And they had actually the test run just a couple of weeks ago in the Lake of Geneva. And so it's a boat that has hydrofoils, and it can go at very low energy at a very high speed. And this was the concept that has presented last year, and we are now in, the startup, and we are helping them in various discussions here with various main players, and especially it's also linked with the Expo 2025 to link actually the Expo site with different airports, with different terminals, and so that's one thing that is in the making now. But we also, since we are very much committed with SDGs, we have another startup that can break down any kind of PET polyester. For example, they can recycle the suit into the original oil and cotton, for example, or any kind of PET into the original form into the oil. And this is at room temperature, so it's the only startup in the world that can do it. And they also are heavily approached at the moment. So we open doors for this kind of startup. So these are 2 examples. But if you are outside, we have a magazine, the Top 100 magazine, where the best... Yeah, Carlos is...
Thank you, Carlos.
So it's fresh from outside. So these are the top 100 startups back in Switzerland, nominated, very fresh, which have the highest potential on the market. And if you're curious in various fields like sustainable food, also on the medtech side, even it goes very deep into areas which we would not expect in the energy field as well. So please have a look, and it's a very rich on context, and it's all in Japanese.
Fantastic, thank you. Can I ask why you chose Osaka as the location?
So for us, Osaka is on one hand linked to the Expo, of course. So we will open our consulate in September. And one of the reasons why we chose Osaka, because it's it's not only the second largest economic region into Japan, but also culturally, it's a kind of different place here in Japan. The people are very open, very welcoming. So it's very easy to approach the various stakeholders here in the region, and this is what we profit a lot at the moment. But again, it's a combination of the richness, so it's a cradle of innovation here. So this richness next to the cultural richness, of course, that we value very much, and actually on a daily basis, this helps us to do our job.
Makes sense. It sounds like a perfect fit.
Oh, yeah.
And we're excited for the opening as well. Fabian, you mentioned you're the newest kid on the block, so I would love to hear your experience in Kansai so far.
Well, I really like Dr. Mosner's use of the phrase cradle of innovation. And I do really see a lot of the elements here that are pointing towards like how Osaka is building up as a cradle of innovation. I think yesterday when we went for the opening event, there was a quote that Osaka was the place where the first rice futures was actually established. That was in the 18th century. And Osaka is a merchant town. And I was told, people say, mo karimaka, right? I mean, in Tokyo, we say, konnichiwa, ohayo gozaimasu, genki desu ka? But here, it's the merchant town identity. And my sense, I mean, this is probably my 5th or 6th business trip to Osaka. Since I took on post, I realized that Osaka people have this very keen motivation to act, not just talk. You know, we have a lot of the so-called courtesy meetings in Japan. That's very typical. But the Osaka people have been telling me, don't just have a courtesy call. We want to have real action, which is good, which is amazing, because in Singapore, we also want to do. We don't want to just talk, because I think the doing really, it's through the doing we get like our feet dirty, our hands dirty, and that we get to understand each other better, that we get to co-create innovation and products and services roll out. I'll give you an example. I met up with one of the very senior management from Hankyu Hanshin, so one of the business corporates in Osaka, very active here. And he was telling me, Fabian-san, you have to tell me what are the real challenges that your Singapore startups are facing in the Osaka business environment. Don't just tell me the courtesy ones, tell me the real ones, and give me as much concrete details as possible. And he's the CEO of one of the Hankyu Hanshin subsidiary, very senior executive. And I was amazed at his interest to drill deep into the root of the issue. So I gave him a few ideas. So one of the ideas I talked about was bicultural talent. What do I mean by bicultural talent? People who understand Western, Singapore way of working, Switzerland way of working, Israeli way of working, and also people who understand Japanese kuki, reading the air, right? Kukiyomu. It's very important. And I realized that this group of people who can be effective bridges between Kansai, between Japan, and foreign countries are not really that big a group. Because a lot of the people, they have a very similar path of success, but we need more people who are mavericks in this open innovation ecosystem. Just a little initiative that we have been doing. I saw the word speed dating somewhere outside. And I think you all would be happy to know that at the Singapore Embassy, at the Enterprise Singapore, we do quite a few speed dating events as well. So far in Tokyo, but I'm very keen to do one in Osaka as well. Speed dating, not for you to find your boyfriend or your girlfriend, but more of like startups with talented individuals. So they could be university students. You know, you have very good universities here. Kyoto Daigaku, Handai, Osaka University, Kansai University, Kindai, you know, Kobe Daigaku. There's a lot of good universities here, that's one. There could also be this group of Japanese people who have lived abroad before. And that's a very good group because they have spent some time in Silicon Valley. They have spent some time in Tel Aviv. They spent some time in Geneva. And they're now back in Japan. They want to do something new. And they may not want to do the salaryman job. So this could be a good pool of talent. The third group is even our young graduates, the Japanese graduates, or even Japanese salaryman. They have been working for a corporate for the first 10 years. They have some economic stability in their life. And they say, I want to do something very new and different. I want to create a new product. I want to help my business organization create a new revenue stream. So these are the people that we're looking out for as well. And I think they will be very important connectors between Kansai and the world, especially with the Expo coming up, Expo 2025, because I think the window period is this few years. I think Kansai has a lot to really leverage and capitalize in terms of opportunities. Maybe I'll just end off with one little quote I heard from, again, a top business leader in Kansai. He is actually originally from Kanto. And I had dinner with him a few months ago. He was telling me, he said, Fabian-san, for all your Singapore companies coming to Japan, up till 2025, ask them to focus on Kansai because we have the Expo coming up. Yeah, and he's from Kanto. Yeah, so I was very pleasantly surprised, but it also shows the gumption and the dare-to-do spirit in them, which I think is very valuable.
Yep, certainly all eyes are on the region. And I do echo your opinion about needing more talent in this industry to bridge that gap. And it's a very exciting industry to be in, right? Thank you. Hiroshi, I believe you've got experience in Kansai, not only with Optibus, but also with past companies as well, right?
Okay, so the corporate side, generally speaking, so if the corporate decided the location or something, so the corporate start with the go-to-market plan. It's more a marketing plan. So the corporates want to see that, so if the customers there's some potential customers in Osaka or Kansai area or something. We analyze that, and we decided which area is the most focus area. So, for example, the manufacturing company or traditional company, B2C, et cetera, that's the one logic. The another logic is if there is an existing local partner or existing customer or that. So if there is an existing partner in Osaka, it's very convenient. Having an office in Osaka is more collaboration. So, and that's the general logic. So corporate decided the location. And also the last one is something like a POC and some supporting for the local government. So if the Osaka city or Osaka-shi has some the supporting program for the startup company, so probably it's going to be the good opportunity for foreign company to having an office here in Osaka and receiving some of the support for like a local city. And for my personal experience for foreign companies, so most likely having an office in Tokyo, but we have another second office in Osaka. That's one of the example. And also the another one is I have experienced having the biggest customers is not Tokyo, in Osaka, is south area of Osaka. So big project. So the company needs to think about very seriously the resources allocation and the location of not only the Tokyo, but also the Osaka area and Kansai area. So so the corporate side is more more business logic. So profitability and the revenue, et cetera, deals, right?
That actually gets me thinking, many people in Kansai are really trying to encourage more foreign companies to actually establish an office or a branch here in Kansai. And you just mentioned the importance of a local partner, the ability to do a POC on the ground here, are two very important factors. Do you have any opinions about what is actually needed for a startup to justify establishing an office here in Kansai?
Yes, I think it's a very straightforward question. When you come as a startup to Japan, obviously Japan is a huge market, which is extremely interesting to tap into. For this, you need to make a choice at the beginning. Is it the right market? That means, does your startup, the product, does it fit? And so we have a program that supports this. So it's an evaluation program to see, does it fit? And once we see that there's a good match, then on the second phase of this, and actually it's a governmental run program by InnoSwiss, which is the Swiss Innovation Agency. Then on the second phase is we help the startups to enter the Japanese market. And of course, I mean, with this, you have to see whether the ecosystem is right. And definitely in Osaka, you have all the ingredients what's needed. I mean, from university, about government, about big corporates, very entrepreneurial people, and also you have some money. But maybe I will say a few more things later on that part. But one thing that is very clear is once you see that there's a match, you have to sooner or later to decide, should I set up an office here or not? And I think that's something that is very relevant. And for this, you need additional ingredients where we also help to put it together. I mean, connecting to a lawyer, connecting to HR, possibilities to hire the right people. So there's a line of other services that we also help so that our aim is that the startup is successful in Japan. And since we are located in Osaka, for us, obviously, it's much easier to help the startups to come right away to Osaka and start their activities here.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. What do you think, Fabien? What are the most important ingredients, do you think, for a company to choose this area to settle?
Sure. Perhaps how I will address this question is to mention a question that I always get asked. And this question is, so Fabien, I've been in Tokyo for some time, but I'm looking at business opportunities outside Tokyo. So I've heard about, Kansai is an amazing area. There's Fukuoka as well. There's, Hokkaido as well. Sapporo is coming up as a startup city. Hiroshima as well. And, JETRO has like what they call the J startup cities across different parts of Japan. So can you guide me? How do I make my decision? So that's a very typical question I get through the course of my work. And in terms of like this is just my 5 cents worth, and what I think is that differentiation is important. And differentiation can be done at multi-levels. It's multifaceted as well, right? One is really the sectors of interest. The sectors of interest. So from my own observation, I think that Kansai has very strong base of biomedical research capabilities. You have like RIKEN, you have FBRI, you have like Shionogi. These are all very good bio expertise. Well, the second one is really in the area of manufacturing. I think you all have very strong base of manufacturers in Higashi Osaka. You have Panasonic in Kadoma. You have like your Shimano. You have Kyoto, Shimadzu. And I think that one is very important as well because the monozukuri culture is something that differentiates Kansai from other parts of Japan, especially their strong manufacturing expertise. I do think that mobility is another space where you are doing very well because you have significant mass of people. Because you're the second largest metropolis conurbation in Japan. And every business, especially B2C business, you really need people, you need skill. And it's really how you can actually effectively link up your suburbs, your big towns, with like the metropolitan transport nodes, Umeda, Tennoji, Namba, and how do you actually connect this last mile, which sometimes is very challenging. In many cities around the world, you get a lot of public transport issues, you get congestion, you get air pollution, and I do think that Kansai can actually differentiate in this area. And maybe the last area to talk about is SDG. I heard the term mentioned a few times, especially with the expo coming up. And you do have a good base of like, I would say clean companies, companies that are doing renewables, companies that are interested in decarbonization. I recall talking to Osaka Gas, and they're putting a lot of investments in hydrogen. Even Kobe Steel, right? Steel companies, they need to look at decarbonization as well because 2050 is coming up, the CDM, the Clean Development Mechanism, there's a lot of these pressures on sustainability. And sustainability is no longer a hobby, no longer a corporate social responsibility, but it's really part and parcel of the P&L. Because you can easily be boycotted if you are polluting the environment. Because the conscious consumers, they are very careful what they buy and what they don't buy. Yeah. So I think these are just some ideas that come to mind when I think about how Kansai as an ecosystem can differentiate itself.
Specific sectors for specific regions, right? Yeah, I think a lot of countries are doing that very successfully as well. Okay, thank you. I'm aware of time, so I will move on, and I'm really finally would like to focus on the main topic of Kansai aiming to become a global innovation hub. Yeah, I think this term has a lot of different meanings for a lot of different people. So I would love to personally ask you about your own ecosystems, thinking about Switzerland, Singapore, and Israel. And if you compare back to your own ecosystems, which are arguably some of the most advanced global innovation ecosystems in the world, what are some key differences that you notice there that you think could, should, need to be adopted here in the region for it to truly become a global innovation hub? Would you like to start, Felix?
I think it's a very important question because when you put an innovation ecosystem together, you need to have the main stakeholders in place. And when I compare back in Switzerland, I think one thing that we really did do very well during the last 12 years, we are the most innovative country in the world, which is in one of the rankings, the innovation index, global innovation index, which is shown quite extensively. But it also means that we continuously have to invest, and it does not come for granted. So you need to have a very strong education, invest in education, which produces good, solid research, and this obviously also leads to a lot of output in innovation. So this is the cycle. But we in Switzerland, what we also invest is, we invest a lot in vocational training. So only 25 to 30% of the Swiss people go to university. So then you ask yourself, what does the rest do? They have a rock solid education. So every Swiss person contributes to the society with a very good education. But this means not everyone needs to go to university. And I think this is something that we have in Europe in a few countries, only Switzerland, Germany, and Austria that have this system that really allows that the whole country is contributing to innovation. So that's maybe one of the big differences to many other ecosystems. But when I look here in Japan, I think you have the skills. So the skills in Japan are extremely high standard. And that's something where we match very well together, because also the Swiss standards are extremely high. So I think that's why we are very much like-minded and we speak the same language. One thing when I look here in Kansai to answer your question is, I think one element that in these many stakeholders, 5-6 stakeholders that you need to make a successful ecosystem is you also need investment. And I mentioned this earlier, so I think what would be extremely happy is to have more venture capital, and I think also very important from the corporates, so the CVCs, but also private investors that give faith to invest in startups, for example. So this element, if this could be brought up, there would be a superb, excellent ecosystem here.
Fascinating. Thank you for that opinion. Fabian?
Yeah, I know we are approaching the end of the session, so I'll just go faster. I would say GIA, Global Innovation Alliance. So you talk about diversity, you talk about global innovation ecosystem, and from Singapore's side, we, from the start of our startup journey, we realized that Singapore as a startup node cannot exist on its own. We have to connect, and our Deputy Prime Minister at that time, Mr. Heng Swee Keat, had announced that we are setting up this GIA program, Global Innovation Alliance program, with 25 nodes around the world. So you have, for example, Jakarta, you have Beijing, you have San Francisco, you have, right now with Tokyo, but we're looking at Osaka as well very closely and very keenly. How do we actually connect these 25 nodes around the world with Singapore? And it would mean, for example, the top best-in-class startups from Singapore would go to this 25 nodes around the world. And the 25 nodes send their best startups to Singapore as well. So you really compete the best with the best. And we have an annual startup competition called Slingshot. And the winners, typically they're not Singaporean startups. And in fact, one of our leaders mentioned, if the winner is a Singapore startup, it means that maybe our ecosystem is not diverse enough. So the best startup could be American, it could be Swiss, it could be Israeli, it could be German, you know? And coming to Singapore and really pitting with the best of the best, and then if they still emerge as the champion, then that's really a sign of the diversity and the maturity of your startup ecosystem. And on that note, I would say that actually Hack Osaka is definitely on the right track because I see huge international diverse representation. I had lunch with people from France, entrepreneurs from the UK, from Australia, and that to me is like amazing, the kind of camaraderie and the kind of diversity that we're building.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And Hiroshi.
Yes, so I would say 3 points. One is a language barrier. Second one is the business matching. Last one is the supporting POC. And language barrier is I experienced lots of the foreign company are starting up. So they come to Singapore, China, and Hong Kong, and most likely in Asia, they're going to be in Australia or Singapore first, right? Speaking English, right? And also they're looking at the potential country in Japan, but the reality is some of the are very limited people speaking fluent English. So language barrier is something like one of the problems. So if Osaka has, or Kansai has some environment supporting solving that language barrier is the one point. Second point of the initial phase of the business for corporate is they are looking for local partner, right? So, but they don't know anything. They don't know who is the company in Tokyo, so, or Osaka, right? So if the Osaka or Kansai has an environment having more business matching between local Kansai company and also foreign company, right? So it's very good for the coming to Osaka or Kansai area. The last one is the hardest one for a startup company is having the first customer in Japan. So because of the Japan, it needs to have a liability in Japan. So, but a startup company don't have any liability in Japan. So that's the very hardest part. If our local authority or city or Osaka City or Osaka FU having supporting for environment for provide the POC environment. For example, if I talk to the prospect in Hyogo or an Osaka, so if I can talk the customers, I'm now working with Osaka City or POC right now, so I can talk to the Osaka City's name or Yoshimura-san's name, so they know him. So that's a very good for opportunity to showing the prospect the Osaka's name or some of the famous person's name in front of the prospect. So the local city needs to have a more supporting program for the more startup company here in Japan. Yeah.
Right. Everything becomes easier after your first penguin here in Japan, right? Well, thank you so much. I do apologize. We have gone over time, so apologies to the event organizers as well. I found today insightful. I could talk for hours. I really do hope that everybody out here connect with these amazing people here. I believe the contact details will be shown on the slide here. And I do hope that all of you here today make some valuable connections and hopefully turn some of these suggestions today into a reality. So could you please join me in saying a large thank you, a round of applause to these amazing people. Arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you. Sorry, we were a bit long. お待たせいたしました。